First up is announcements. Our board will continue to broadcast live through the town's website and the meeting portal. Public comments will be heard during the public comment period at the start of each meeting. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person, and comments are limited to agenda items. No written comments submitted to the planning board via email or U.S. mail will be distributed to the board, saved in the project file, and uploaded to the meeting agenda. Comments must be submitted by 3 o'clock on the day of meeting to allow for it to be distributed to all board members. So our first item this evening is public comment periods on regular agenda items. The first item on the agenda is public comments for, like I said, regular agenda items. Note the board only accepts comments at its meeting for items on the agenda. So this evening we are looking at the Chamberlain self-storage facility. Is there anyone from the public that would like to provide comments on Chamberlain self-storage?
Yes, my name is Chris Dempf.
Can you speak into the microphone and indicate what project you're referring to?
Yes, Chris Dempf. I'm making, and I have some people here that are going to make some comments on the agenda item that's referred to as minutes approval, Tuesday, May 17, 2022. And I believe minutes approval is on the agenda and those minutes are on the agenda. So we would like to make some comments on that. And I would like to confirm that prior to 3 o'clock today, we submitted a letter with attachments. And I'd like to some acknowledgement that you received it. Now this is on the wind tower factory project on Beacon Island.
Yeah, so that is not an agenda item this evening, so we will not be accepting comments on that item this evening. If you do have comments on agenda items, which is Chamberlain self-storage, as I mentioned, we'd be happy to hear those comments. If not, any other comments in regards to projects that are not on the agenda this evening, we're more than happy to go to the town board.
So if you could tell me where on this planning board agenda, regular agenda items are referred to. I do not believe the Chamberlain Street self-storage reference is on the regular agenda item.
It is. It's under discussion item A, Chamberlain self-storage.
Oh, okay. So I just would like to refer you to, Brian, item Roman numeral 4, minutes approval, A, Tuesday, May 17, 2022. Now I do note that the board did not indicate what the minutes were that were being approved. So we are presuming that the minutes that you are trying to approve at this point it relates to the planning board approval of the wind turbine factory. Is that true?
I honestly have not had a chance to look at the meeting minutes, so I'm not sure. But I do know that we are talking about Chamberlain self-storage this evening and not the port, so we will not be able to take any public comments.
Well, now this is a public meeting, and you notice this meeting pursuant to the open meetings law. So I believe that this is something that we're entitled to speak publicly on. And I would think that the planning board, this planning board, that is trying to approve minutes that were already approved, that were approved, a meeting on May 17th that at this point has not yet been approved, I would think that it would be open for discussion. And I really do question why it's not labeled on the agenda. Again, you guys are subject to the open meetings law, and I think that we, with all due respect, this is an agenda item just like anything else on the agenda tonight, and we should be able to make public comment on it.
As I indicated, if you have public comment on Chamberlain self-storage, or anyone else in the audience has public comment on Chamberlain self-storage, I'd be happy to take those comments, but we will not be taking comments on it.
Again, pursuant to the open meeting law, we respectfully submit that this is something that is open for public discussion. It's public participation, comments on regular agenda items, and approval of the minutes for the Tuesday, May 17, 2022 meeting are attached. Now, if you would like to take a moment and see what the minutes are that you're going to try to approve tonight, I would suggest that we take a brief recess and allow the planning board to get up to speed with the minutes that they're going to be approving tonight.
I respectfully disagree, and I will ask if anyone else has public comments on Chamberlain self-storage. We'd be happy to hear those this evening. and I would refer you to the town board to provide comments. As you're aware, this board is under Article 78, and we will not be participating in any correspondence.
We're not asking for any comments from the planning board, but we want to submit our comments on an agenda item, which is the approval of the May 17, 2022 minutes, which is the port project. So I think that's fair game. Is the town attorney available for the planning board?
Not at this time.
Oh, okay. So, well, I want to make note that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people here, and it's ready to make comments on the agenda item.
As I indicated, we're talking about Chamberlain self-storage this evening. Regular project agenda item is Chamberlain self-storage. So if you have any comments on that, like I said, we'd be happy to hear those comments. But
then, pursuant to the open meeting law, we would request that approval of the minutes for May 17, 2022 be tabled until a later date, until you get a legal ruling on this. I don't want to be in a position where I'm wrangling about the open meeting law, but I will do so if I need to. So I suggest that you be in touch with the town attorney and that you take a brief recess.
Thank you for your suggestion.
I'd like to have the people here identify themselves.
Chris, we're not having an agenda item topic about this.
So can I ask a question? My name is Sylvia Rowlands, and I live on Halter Road in Glenmont. And are your meeting minute approvals regular agenda items?
I don't know the answer to that question. What I do
Do
know
you
the
have
answer.
it at every meeting?
What I do know the
Do you
answer.
approve minutes at every meeting?
Yeah, this is not a question and answer. So we're talking about Chamberlain self-storage. So if you have comments on Chamberlain self-storage, I'd be happy to take those this evening.
Okay,
Thank you.
I do have a comment. I have a question around Chamberlain self-storage.
Go right ahead. Provide your comment.
So if you were proposing the Chamberlain self-storage facility on Beacon Island, which is a coal combustion residual dump site for 2 decades, would you approve that? Would you be presenting that?
Thank you for your comments. I don't have, this is not a back and forth. Thank you for your comments.
Go ahead, I just did that first. Go ahead.
How you doing, folks? My name is Kellen Rollins. I'm at 64 Halter Road. I'm also here to have a conversation regarding the. You guys okay?
No, I think. Can you repeat your name?
Sure. My name is Kellen Rollins at 64 Halter Road. I'm also here to have a conversation about the meeting minutes and to make some determination about what is a permissible discussion today. So, thanks for just here.
Thank you very much. I'll be happy to make the comment that we will be tabling the meeting minutes, so there will be no action item on the meeting minutes this evening. So, thank you for your comment.
Hi there, I'm Janine Getz. I live on Retreat House Road, and of course I'm here about the port project, but I will say one thing about this project. How much land is going to get squeezed out of this town before there's none left? Because this is literally at a bypass. This town used to be quiet and peaceful, and now it's becoming a small city with all these factories and buildings, and it's ugly. I don't know about you, but I used to be proud to say I live in Bethlehem. Now I'm kind of disgusted with it.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I'm Joanne Meyer. I live at 11 Andrews Lane, Glenmont, New York. And I was going through you're a very well qualified board. I'm going through your bios, and it seems like under Brian's it said, specialists in water infrastructure projects
Are you
and
referring
community
to a project
outreach.
agenda item?
Community outreach. Now that could be a problem, Brian, that it says
Okay,
community
I'm sorry. Are you
outreach
referring to a project
and
and a project item?
increased transparency in government and citizen participation. Maybe this is what the issue is tonight, is that we should have more transparency, more citizen input, and review community outreach. That's quoting your bio on the town website. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm Diane Easton, 43 Sunset Drive, Ellesmere, and I'd just like to see a copy of the minutes that are being tabled so we know what was discussed at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comments on Chamberlain self-storage?
Hello, I'm Lori Deb, 74 Hartman Road, and R2 am here and was hoping to comment on the minutes of that meeting.
Thank you for your comments.
Phil Rowlands at
Can you hold it?
Phil Rowlands at 54 Halton Road, and I too would like a copy of the meeting minutes that you were going through.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Dan Meyer, 11 Anders Lane, and I'd also like a copy of the minutes from that meeting, May 17th meeting. Thank you.
Amy Musiker just arrived too. She lives at 146 Glenmont Hill Road. I just wanted to introduce her. So we do have some comments about, I believe this project is in Glenmont.
Do you have project comments on Chamberlain self-storage, Chris? If not, we're not here to
Right,
help.
it's in Glenmont though, right?
Chris, you should know the project if you have comments on it. So if you have project comments on Chamberlain self-storage, happy to hear those.
Right, so we've submitted comments to the board about the unique character of Glenmont, and we'd like that aspect of what we submitted before, those are written comments, included in this Chamberlain application, because it's important for this board to understand the history of Glenmont, the town of Bethlehem, etc., before it makes any decision on any application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Alright, seeing no more, that concludes our public participation portion of the meeting. As we discussed, meeting minutes will be held and tabled. We will not be taking action on the meeting minutes of May 17th.
At all tonight.
Thank you very much. Our
Thank you.
next action item, or next item is discussion item. This is the Chamberlain Street self-storage facility at 28 Chamberlain Street. Tonight we are...
Hi, my name is Joanne Meyer. I live at 11 Anders Lane, Glenmont, New York. You may notice we're outside Town Hall of Bethlehem tonight. We were hoping to speak before the planning board, but they were not very receptive. Speaking of the planning board, I'd like to say I feel that they're very well qualified planning board. That we have expertise in many, many areas. I went to the town planning board site and read their bios. I thought I'd take some excerpts. We have a remediation and an environmental compliance expert. We have a hazard mitigation and planning expert. We have land planning and site development expert. We have a specialist in water infrastructure projects, and he's also in charge of community outreach. We also have a person who's working to increase the transparency and competence of government at all levels and increasing the participation of citizens in their government. These are direct quotes from the bios on the town planning board website. And yet, for 3.5 years, that's 84 meetings, little if any community outreach, transparency in government, or participation of citizens in their government during the development process of Beacon Island project. Not one resident in this mile radius received a written notification of any meetings. A note was posted on the town bulletin board. However, the town was closed for the pandemic, and after that you had to have an appointment to get in to see the note. The agenda was posted online if you have internet. And of the 35,000 people who live in Bethlehem, I don't know of anyone who really makes a practice of reading the planning board minutes. The notice was placed in the spotlight of all the population in Glenmont zip code only 4 out of 90 people received the spotlight. So without direct mailing, which nobody in the area received, we had no information. Where was the community outreach? Where was the transparency? Where was the increased participation of citizens in their government? It seemed to be sadly lacking. I'd second like to mention the comprehensive plan that the town of Bethlehem passed. I'm quoting from the Spotlight that Bethlehem cites the state mandate among several more factors as it establishes its stance, including the state environmental rights amendment passed in 2021. The referendum guaranteeing all residents the right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment was approved by 70% of the town voters last year. Quoting the Spotlight again, the plan has already established several value statements expressing 6 overarching principles. Harmony with nature, healthy community, and responsible government are 3 of those. I'd also like to speak on the limited exception permit that was issued to the company for clear cutting 82 acres of 2 million tons of known airborne carcinogenic or cancer-causing particles. Okay, this limited edition permit allowed the applicant to conduct tree clearing without all the uniform procedures acts permit. Okay, why do they need this exception if they're above and beyond questioning as far as what they're doing to the environment? Who would knowingly disturb 2 million tons of cancer-causing airborne particles? During the 2 weeks of destruction, of unmonitored destruction due to this limited issue permit, 82 acres of vegetation were clear cut. I live on the hill above that, and there was a large dust clouds while they were clearing. Okay, a friend lives on Retreat House Road, on the hill above that. She went to the doctors twice during this time for what they call tight lung. She was hospitalized on her 80th birthday for breathing issues. I'm not saying it's cause and effect because I don't know if it's cause and effect. I think we need to have testing, surface testing done, see what the people, especially on Old Glenmont Road, Retreat House Road, were exposed to. You can see the large circle. In that circle you have an elementary school, 348 students. They were out playing 2 weeks during recess. I don't know what they were breathing in. Maybe they were breathing in nothing, maybe they're breathing in airborne carcinogens. I think again we need to have it tested, site testing, and see what's happening. I'd also like to speak to the health equity issue, or actually health inequity issue, I should say. There's a lot said about health of low-income minority residents. This project is a perfect example. It's the railroad track population, whether it's north in Albany, whether it's east in Rensselaer and Castleton, or whether it's south on the Old River Road, Retreat House Road. You get low, middle income people. Again, health equity, where are the studies? Who's taking samples? Who's checking to see during the destruction? I know there's a lot about when the building begins and after it is in working order. I don't think anything was done with the destruction. No monitoring, no air quality. Again, I think that's a huge area where we need to focus. And lastly, I'd like to read this, please. Please correct or amend the resolution to clarify that there will be a supplemental final environmental impact statement after the federal and state agencies review and permit process are complete. Please correct or amend the resolution to provide that all work, including but not limited to clearing, logging, and grubbing, shall cease until after federal NEPA procedure is concluded and after Town Port District Commission supplements its findings. We also respectfully submit that this factory should be relocated to another part of Bethlehem or not at all. We also request that the Town Planning Board, who we cannot speak in front of, approve for this proposed wind tower factory should be voluntarily vacated by this board, and the application for town approval should be properly notified, and then the record reopened for public comment and new hearing data scheduled.
Amy Musiker, I live on Glenmont Road. I just want to say I'm actually appalled that I couldn't even speak in front of the planning board tonight. I was just going to offer a few comments, not similar to what the lady before me did. She was quite comprehensive. I just feel that this project is going to be extremely damaging. I'd love to see a cost-benefit analysis. I'd love to see the analysis that they did. Anytime I tried to go online to get any information, I couldn't get any detailed information. I happen to be a chartered financial analyst by trade, and I like to delve into details. I couldn't find any details. Speaking about that, it was very difficult to get any information about what the progress of this project was. I'm also appalled that we never had a public hearing in person. What else can I say? I think that this is a travesty. It's going to be a huge mistake if it's allowed to go forward. Put it in a place where people don't live within a 1 mile radius. Put it in. I actually went to the doctor, and it's it's on record during this time because it was difficult for me to breathe. I live just right upwind from this devastation. Okay, and now I'm going to say, please correct or amend the resolution to clarify that there will be a supplemental final environmental impact statement after the federal and state agencies' review and permitting process are complete. Please correct or amend the resolution to provide that all work, including but not limited to clearing, logging, and grubbing, shall cease until after federal NEPA processes.
Hi, my name is Dan Meyer. My wife Joanne and I have lived on Anders Lane, directly across from the proposed Beacon Island construction site. And we've lived there 46 years and raised our children there. And I just want to put a little bit in historical perspective. Years ago, we were notified that there was going to be a formaldehyde plant in the same area. We were given notice as town residents that this was on the books. And we had the opportunity to come and speak before the board, and everything was done according to what we thought was the correct way of dealing with this. That project was defeated because of the upset that it caused the residents in the town of the hamlet of Glenmont. Another opportunity came up, and the town decided that maybe they could put a toxic waste burning plant in the same area. And again, we were given advance notice, appeared as a community, and that proposal was also put down. This time there was no advance notice. We've never received anything from the town or the planning board or the zoning board that anything was going to happen in our area again. I feel a sense of betrayal by the planning board, by the zoning board, that number one, we weren't notified. Number two, that they would once again treat this area of Glenmont as a dumping spot for something that is totally unpopular, unhealthy, and we are up in arms again about this. We hope it's not too late, but this is how we've been treated by the planning board. We're out on the front lawn, and I'm so disappointed in their reaction to our showing up today for the meeting. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Easton at 43 Sunset Drive in Del Mar, and I'm here also came to speak to the planning board about the minutes of last meeting. We would have been here earlier if we had had notice, but as everybody has said, there was no written notice to any of the residents of the area that this was going to happen. And here's the river, here's the project, and these are all houses. All houses. They make it look like there aren't any. We've only identified dead people here. But this nice aerial photograph shows you the proposed plant and these little buildings. They're feet. Couple hundred, past the 200 feet law that says they have to notify by what, 50 feet? These are 250, 300 feet from what might be this. And there was no notice. They won't open up the topic for discussion anymore. So we were all here to please ask the planning board to please correct or amend the resolution to clarify that there will be a supplemental final environmental impact statement after the federal and state agencies' review and permitting processes are completed. Please correct or amend the resolution to provide that all work, including but not limited to the clearing, logging, and grubbing, shall cease until after federal NEPA process is concluded and after the Town Port District Commission supplements its findings. We also respectfully submit that this factory should be relocated to another part of Bethlehem, farther from houses, I'm adding that, or not built at all. We also request that the Town Planning Board approval for this proposed wind tower factory should be voluntarily vacated by this board, and the application for town approval should be properly noticed and then reopened for public comment and a new hearing date scheduled. It's the least they can do when nobody has had a chance to speak out against this. Everything in the newspaper said this was going to be an assembly plant. They pictured low buildings. They pictured green space around there. They showed trees. This isn't an assembly plant, it's a factory. They're calling these discharge towers. And at the town board meeting, the port engineer said there were going to be 3 discharge towers. Then why is there a picture of a factory with 20 smokestacks? Let's call them what they really are.
Hi, I'm Lori Dempf. I live on 74 Hartman Road in Glenmont. And I too was hoping to make my comments in front of the planning board tonight, but unfortunately was not allowed to do so. But I am going to take the opportunity to make them here. I recently returned from a wonderful trip with my husband and my sister's family to the Annapolis, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. area. While there, we enjoyed seeing the many historic sites, the beautiful architecture, and the breathtaking scenery of the Chesapeake Bay and along the Potomac River. I was struck with awe, admiration, and gratitude as I considered the imagination and foresight of the people who worked so hard to preserve the history and beauty of those places. For example, we learned as we toured Mount Vernon, George Washington's historic estate, that its preservation occurred because of a letter written to her daughter by Louisa Bird Cunningham in 1853 when she noticed how the estate had fallen into disrepair. This prompted her daughter to challenge the nation to save the site, and she founded the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, who raised the money and bought the property for $200,000 within 5 years. This intrepid group of American patriots has been preserving and promoting George Washington's Mount Vernon for more than 160 years. They have also fought and have succeeded in preserving the stunning viewshed of the Potomac River, so that people who visit today can stand on Mount Vernon's rolling front lawn and, except for a few boats on the river, experience the same view that Washington saw more than 200 years ago. This particular battle began in the early 1950s when the association joined with the Accocheek Foundation, the National Park Service, the Smithsonian Institute, and many neighboring property owners to prevent the construction of an oil tank farm directly across the Potomac from Mount Vernon. Their efforts stopped the construction. There have been many similar battles fought and won in the decades since to preserve that view. I have often lamented that Albany and the town of Bethlehem, as you drive along 787 and River Road with all the industry, have not done more to preserve the incredible history and beauty of the views and shorelines of the Hudson River, which has such a prominent role in the history of our nation. I've been feeling that sadness even more so in recent months as I've become aware of the wind tower factory project and felt it so keenly during our recent trip. Much like Mount Vernon, our little town of Bethlehem has special and noteworthy history. When I moved here from the Midwest in the mid-'80s, where the earliest recorded history is easily 100 years younger than the history of the East Coast, I fell in love with this storybook town. I was fascinated to learn that the history of its establishment resulted literally from Henry Hudson's historic river voyage that I had learned about in school in Millbank, South Dakota. I was enthralled with the many beautiful historic homes and loved learning the stories behind the historic names of streets, roads, and streams. I saw how Bethlehem celebrated its history in the many books written and published, the preservation and restoration of historic buildings, archaeological digs, museums, and of course the annual Memorial Day parade. My husband's family, who had lived in Bethlehem for a couple of generations, was proud to share Bethlehem's history with me. Chris's dad, Lou Dempf, who graduated from Bethlehem High School in 1947, and whose family owned and operated the Dempf pastry shop from 1927 through the 1950s, would often say, "I grew up in utopia." I think most of us who stayed here, moved here, raised our families here feel the same way. Why do we feel this way? Is it because of the widening roads or the proliferation of housing developments and shopping centers and factories and storage facilities coming into the town? For me, it's because of the charming homes and quiet streets where kids can still safely ride their bikes to a friend's house. How I always run into a familiar face at my place, Swifties or Delmar Marketplace. The wonderful programs and gallery displays at the library celebrating local talents and history. And how the Fife and Drum Corps in our annual parade reminds me how connected we are to our nation's history. When we think of the historical nation of Bethlehem, our minds might immediately think Old Delmar. However, did you know the earliest days of our recorded history actually began in Glenmont? Town historian Susan Leith in her book Bethlehem People and Places tells us that just a short distance from the location of the original Fort Orange, the Abbey Hotel was built on River Road in the early 1700s and was a Bethlehem landmark for over 200 years. The Abbey Hotel was located just down the street from Retreat House Road near the horse track. It provided lodging and refreshment for travelers on horseback, steamboat, train, and later automobile. In Bethlehem Revisited by the Bicentennial History Committee, we learn it was a popular gathering place for local politicians, as well as a popular spot for family picnics and clam bakes along the Hudson River. It is even thought to have been a speakeasy during the days of Prohibition. Supreme Court Judge Elia Powell Hulbert, who wrote Rights of Women in 1841 and later served on the New York State Suffrage Committee in the 1880s, lived in a mansion on Halter Road. A Titanic survivor from 1912 lived in another mansion on Glenmont Road. The owner of the Hinkle Brewery in Albany had a weekend mansion in the country along River Road, across from the Abbey Hotel in the Hudson River. Many of us who live in Glenmont today live in historic homes that have enjoyed the beautiful river views for generations. Our house on Hartman Road, just off Glenmont Road, was built in 1893. Our friends on Anders Lane and Old River Road live in homes that date at least as far back as the early 1800s. Did you know that this area of Glenmont was once known as Frasertown? It was most likely named after the Fraser family who lived on Anders Lane and Old River Road in the mid-1800s. Frasertown became known as Glenmont in the late 1880s when the West Shore Railroad extended their Albany branch north from Ravenna and established a station they called Glenmont. It is thought that the name came from two prominent homes in the area, the Glen, which was north on River Road, and the Mount, which was up on Glenmont Road. A portion of Beacon Island itself is part of our town history. It once included several small islands behind the Abbey and along River Road, where families would spend time together fishing, boating, enjoying the scenic river and its views of the hills of East Greenbush and Castleton-on-Hudson. While the glory days of the Abbey Hotel are all in the past, please consider trying to preserve the beauty and charm of our town that still very much exists. There are many of us who live in both historic homes and newer homes in Glenmont who take pride in the history of this beautiful hamlet of Bethlehem along the Hudson River. Aside from the serious environmental concerns raised by this proposed wind tower factory and the disruption it will cause to our relatively calm and peaceful Glenmont lifestyle, we feel that the history and character of our town has not been considered and appreciated. Is it not true that a marina project had been previously proposed for this wind tower factory site? Wouldn't a town park or a marina be much more in keeping with the historical nature and character of Glenmont? We are devastated by the many ways in which our lives will change if this project goes forward.
All right, take two. All right. My name is Kellen Rollins. I'm 64 Halter Road in Glenmont, New York.
My name is Amanda Rollins. I'm Kellen's wife. I also live on Halter Road in Glenmont.
We came to the town hall this evening to prepare to give some remarks to the planning committee with regard to the windmill tower project in the Port of Albany and Beacon Island. And I had prepared some remarks, general just inquiries. I have spent some time doing research on some of the material that was aggregated and presented and presumably approved by the board. And again, I just had some general inquiry to the board regarding whether or not they understood and whether or not they were able to fully consume the information that was being presented to them, given that in order to get to a soil management plan, I had to follow 3 separate redirects through 3 separate appendices in 3 separate documents in order to finally arrive at a finalized and comprehensive, if you could call it that, overview of how the port and how this project is planning to manage the soil, as they refer to it. So I'm going to just read a few of those questions and a few of those remarks. So I respectfully inquire as to whether or not the planning committee has fully understood the proposed soil remediation plan and the environmental impact that the project will have. The reason I ask is, again, I've done some exhaustive research, and I specifically wanted to inquire with the committee whether or not the soil management plan from August 13, 2021 was fully understood. As stated, the soil management plan is referring to regulation from the 1970s that they are obligated to follow for the management of the coal combustion residuals and how those coal combustion residuals will be remediated and ultimately incorporated into the construction of the project. According to the 1970s rule, 2 feet of soil is required for closure of a CCR landfill. If there is a construction project to occur concurrently to a contaminated site with coal combustion residuals, then according to, again, this 1970s rule, the construction is required not to abate those CCR and not to remove them and not to dispose of them, but to reincorporate them into the soil of the rest of the site. It's my feeling that heavy metals and coal combustion residuals are not less dangerous 30 years ago than they are now. They're not less dangerous in the 1970s than they are now, and those contaminants still have significant impacts on the natural flora and fauna and on the populations that will ultimately consume them through their drinking water. And it's very important that we pay specific attention to the water in this circumstance, which has been fairly well avoided in all conversations previously. The water is the main concern here. CCRs contain heavy metals, arsenic, mercury, lead, and others, and they have a tendency to leach into surface and groundwater. There were a number of test wells dug at the site, a number of samples taken from the site from varying depths, and almost all of them came back with positive and excessive levels of arsenic, of cadmium, of lead, of mercury, and it sort of boggles the mind to think that those contaminants exceeding levels set by the DEC and EPA are only to be relocated in the same project site. It seriously boggles the mind.
We had some specific questions for the planning board because they're the people listening to these things. Are they doing their due diligence? Are they asking the appropriate questions, that would pertain to us as residents? So those were specifically why we wanted to speak today at the zoning board meeting or planning board meeting.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I came down here to the town hall to have a conversation with the planning board. Pardon me? Oh, and my name. Very good question. My name is Dr. Sylvia Rollins. Oh, I live at 54 Halter Road in Glenmont, New York. What I would like to talk about is the values behind the city of Bethlehem, or the town of Bethlehem, and we hear all about what's the lovely place to be. And we heard earlier from Joanne Mayer, who took a unique look at summarized the qualifications of the planning board members, who seem to be very, very capable and very, very valuable people, meaning that they have really strong values around environmental safety and environmental protection. And I'd like to speak to that. And was also mentioned the town board comprehensive plan that was passed, or the town of Bethlehem comprehensive plan that was passed June 22. I'd like to talk a teeny bit about that too. My name is Dr. Sylvia Rollins. I'm an educational and industrial psychologist. I have spent my career participating and leading research. For the last 17 years, I took that research and I traveled around the world executing evidence-based large system change. In Australia, I managed change in their health and welfare system. In England, I guided implementation of a new juvenile justice reform. And in New York City, I guided them through a social justice change that resulted in the closing of many, many, many prisons. It's hard work. I received death threats. I needed a bodyguard to protect me from the threats of violence. I received anonymous letters in my mailbox. Important people, my peers, leadership, people who could support me stopped talking to me. People followed me home from work. Would it have been easier for me to look the other way? Would money, would position, would being the first have enticed me away? Would it have been easier for me to say one thing and mean another? That's the question that I raised to this planning board. Is it okay to speak of values and a comprehensive plan that supports those values and look the other way when an obvious environmental contamination disaster is looming? Of course, lots of people lost their jobs because of me. Rural economies in New York were hurt by the closing of the jails. It was not a popular thing, but it was the right thing. I had a vision for each to reach their full potential. Words are powerful, and my vision was a commitment to the world for each to reach their full potential. I read the Bethlehem Town Board June 22 adopted new comprehensive plan that is intended to inform future land use, development, policy program, and infrastructure decisions. It described a vision for guiding growth and supporting the elements that make the town of Bethlehem's values strong today, and ways to make it stronger and more sustainable in the future. The vision advances 6 principles, which you heard Joanne talk about earlier, 4 of which are relevant to today's conversation. Those values are livable built environment, harmony with nature, healthy community, and responsible governance. The plan mandates include working together to address climate change, historic preservation, and strategies for a healthy community.
Our healthy community success, the plan says, has come from our practices and development policy. The plan says we value our vast natural resources, systems, and open spaces that provide benefits, including a wildlife habitat, ecosystem services that provide clean air and clean water, and inherent natural beauty and scenic vistas within our community. The values set forth in the comprehensive plan are important. They are not just words on a document that will go on some shelf somewhere. They are your public commitment to the people of the town of Bethlehem, to all of the people of the town of Bethlehem. The fact that you are hearing from Mr. Jordan, the fact that the town board heard from Mr. Jordan, the lawyer of the port project, for the first time last week, only adds to the concerns of the value loss that we're experiencing. Your comprehensive, bold Bethlehem Forward vision, the public commitment you made on June 22, does not align with bringing on board a major fossil fuel-powered metal fabrication factory that will release up to new information, at least 100 tons of pollutants, pollutant particulates annually, which requires you, town board members, to approve the destruction of the habitats for breeding eagles, northern long-eared bats, sturgeon, aquifers, the Normanskill and Hudson riverways, and the health of New York State residents for more than 200 miles along the Hudson corridor. Beyond, with the dispersion of PCB and coal combustion residuals. We are asking you to support the vacating of your permission for the destruction and to honor your stated values of all our natural resource systems and open spaces that provide benefits, clean water, wildlife habitats, and inherent natural beauty and scenic vistas to our community. Thank you.